So, Emma, what's our topic for today?
Our topic for the day is elimination communication.
Yeah, so it's like our journey through how we've done potty training, which is maybe a bit different.
Yeah.
This episode is called Potty Training for Babies. It's us again. We're here to chat about babies and toddlers and, of course, parenting. And you join us here in the imaginary blanket fort. Come and take a break and discuss topics with us, with other parents all around Yorkshire and beyond. And we're not here to provide answers, but to share our experiences, explore how parenting has changed, and just generally build a kind of supportive community through this podcast. We have a 2.5-year-old daughter, and she's occupied, off having fun. And so it's time to have some fun, honest, unscripted conversation between me, I'm Elliot, and my wife, Emma. Say hi.
I was going to say, I'm Emma, but you've already said that.
I said your name for you.
Yes.
This is Emma. Little factoid.
Yeah.
I'm the one who's the morning person who gets up and occupies Lily first thing when she wakes up.
Yeah. And I'm the night shift.
Night shift worker.
Yeah. At any point during the night, I'm on call if Lily needs me.
Yeah.
That is our roles.
There you are. That's how we split some of the duties in our house. Yeah. It's parenting achievement time. So it's the time for us to share what level of parenting we've unlocked, whether it's a parenting fail or just a shareable moment that's a funny story or very relatable to other parents. What are we sharing this week? Oh, we had a recent story we thought we could share. Was it this past weekend? Or?
Yes, last weekend.
Oh, it's been a long week.
It has.
Oh, so get distracted already. So at the weekend, we went to your parents' house to celebrate your dad's birthday.
Yep.
And as part of the celebrations, we had an evening activity.
A Ceilidh.
Yeah, went out to a Ceilidh.
If people don't know what that is, it's Scottish dancing, but it's basically...
It's a barn dance.
Yeah, it's a barn dance.
Anyway, it's one of those typical moments which I think probably is relatable across the spectrum of ages, whether you've got a baby or a toddler, that it was just kind of an awkward time.
Yeah.
Like, it was an evening thing where Lily was meant to be going to bed, and it was like, what do we do? But it's a special occasion. So
and she had a nap, so we were like, oh, maybe she'll be able to stay up a little bit later.
Feels like we needed to make an effort. Baba said, this is not a sensible idea.
It's a bad idea.
I was the stubborn little thing that was like, we should stick to Lily's routine. We should not try and force her out of the routine.
And I was like, but we're going to see everybody and they want to see Lily. They want to get a chance to see her.
And Emma convinced me. She's like, she's had a nap. She'll be fine. She can stay up a bit later.
Yeah.
So we headed out at like 6:30.
Yeah.
And actually, to begin with, she was very into it.
Yeah.
She was running around on the floor.
Dance floor, yeah.
Yeah.
Lily might be able to spend half an hour to an hour here and then she'll go home and sleep. I didn't account for the fact 15 minutes would be taken over the plate.
Yeah. So, and they started like 15 minutes late anyway.
Yeah.
It was just very relaxed. They were all like, oh, we'll let people arrive.
Which
and
was
then we'll
fine
get
for
going.
everybody else because nobody brought children.
Yeah. That might have been a giveaway when we arrived that no one else had brought children. This is
true.
So actually the first dance, there was about like 20 to 8.
Yeah.
And you just carried her around.
I just carried her around and she looked miserable.
To get into the meat of this story, which is...
We've done too much setup.
Yeah, that's the setup, really. At that point, I was like, Lily is just flagging. I said to her, do you want to go home? And she was like, yes, go home, dodo. I was like, great, we're going to go home.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'll take her home. This is Emma's event, Emma's family. She can stay. She's the one who's really into dancing. If you know me, I'm not a dancer at all. I can do a Ceilidh, it's fine, because they tell you what to do.
Yeah.
But so I was like, I'll take Lily home, which again, in hindsight, debatable if it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Lily's very clingy with Mama.
It was a very generous idea.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And this is where my stubbornness kicked in. I was like, I will take her home. I will let Emma have fun. I'm going to be a good dad.
I'm going to be like, no, I'm not pestering her with my problems.
Yeah. So I took her. Already she was upset leaving. She started crying because she was like, why are we leaving Mama behind? Why is she staying here? And Grandma and Granddad were there. She's like, why are we leaving them behind? To get home to Granddad's house where we were staying, I needed to take her in the car.
Yeah.
It's only like 2 miles at most up the road.
Yeah, it's not far.
But we brought the car, and so I tried to put her in the car. I mean, she was screaming at this point anyway, because we'd left and she was like, why have we left Mama? So I was trying to put her in a car seat, but she was kicking off. You know, she's doing that thing, you know, where she like arches her back.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like pulls her arms out and was like half on the floor and kicking. And so I was like having to like kneel on her to get one arm through a strap.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I got one arm through a strap and I let go to get the other arm through, she'd get the other arm out. So I was like, this is not going to, even in the unlikely situation, I get her into the car seat.
She's going to
She's going to get out in like 5 seconds while I'm driving, which is a bad idea. So I was like, what do I do? So I was like, well, I'm stubborn. I'm not going to pester Mama. So I'm going to walk home with her.
I was clueless at this point. I was doing a dance with Dad. And then from my point of view, it was about, I don't know, 20 minutes something later. I looked at my phone and I got a message saying, you might have to come home soon. I've had to walk back with her. And I was like, walk back with her? And then we heard the news, we can't find Bingo.
Yeah, so it was a bad walk home. I had her screaming. She was happy to begin with because she was like, great, I'm out of the car. But then
maybe we're going to get Mama.
Yeah, as soon as she noticed we'd gone past the church hall, she was like, what are we doing? Where are we going? So she was crying again. And I was walking home. I was getting really hot and sweaty trying to carry her because she's so heavy. You know, she's a 2.5-year-old. She's approaching 3. She's not like a little baby anymore. No. She's quite heavy. And it was, you know, like almost 2 miles home. So I was, oh dear. And I was thinking, what am I doing? And also on the way home, I was wearing shoes that were like my going out shoes. They weren't practical shoes. No. So I was getting like a blister on my toe as I was walking. I was like, this is terrible. What am I doing? Why am I doing this? And halfway home, I realised that Lily was going, Bingo, Bingo. And I was like, oh no. I was looking through the colours like, we haven't got Bingo. We haven't got your toy with us. I was like, what do I do? I'm halfway home. I can't go back. I've no idea whether it's in the car, whether it's still in the church hall, whether we've dropped it walking home. I was like, this has gone so wrong. It's gone so terrible. Bad. So yeah, I made it home and messaged Emma and I was like, I don't think she's going to go to sleep. Yeah. She's just in such a state.
You need to come back.
Yeah.
I saw Bingo was on the table at the church hall still, so I grabbed Bingo.
I'd left it behind.
And I've never seen a child look more excited when I came through the door with Bingo and me. She's like, oh, my 2 favourite things are here. Mama and Bingo. And within 5 minutes of Mama being there, Lily fast asleep.
Yeah. There we go.
After all that.
Big parenting fail.
Yeah.
And we went back and we had a lovely time dancing. It was really nice, actually. The best thing, though, was that Baba was proved completely right the following day.
Right.
That the next day, Lily was just completely out of it. Yeah. Just, awful. And I predicted this beforehand. I said, if we ruin her routine like this, we're going to pay for it the next day.
And I was like, she's had a nap. We won't be there long. It's going to be fine. And in fact, we weren't there long. Still ruined her.
She went to bed late.
Day.
She got up at the same time the following day and then was in a terrible mood.
She was. I think this whole thing is for him to say, he told me so.
You can see why I'm telling this story now. I'm going to get this in the podcast. Baba was right. A long-winded story, but it's kind of funny looking back. It wasn't very funny at the time. But do you have a similar tale, parenting fail, or is this relatable to you in any way? How do you cope with special occasions where you've got to try and take your kid out of your routine? Yeah. Does it backfire? Or are your children just happy to be flexible?
Children are just more chill. Whereas Lily's very into her routines.
Yeah. Plus and a minus.
Yeah.
Right, go empty that potty and let's jump into talking about potty training from our perspective.
Our journey through it.
We really were hesitant about having this as a topic on the podcast. For a long time, we've avoided it and we said we won't talk about it because we're not talking about this to show off in any particular way. I think it's important to highlight this at the beginning. It's more that we've done this in a very different way. We've had a very different journey to how most people, I think, is fair to say, experience and undertake potty training. And so we thought it'd be quite interesting to share that as a completely different experience, people might be interested in.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us about some facts and history, Emma? Like in terms of we've called this episode potty training, but what we're talking about is elimination communication.
I don't know if I looked up the history of anything.
Oh, okay.
My notes are all just about us.
Okay. Well, do you want to explain what we mean by that? What is elimination communication?
So, elimination communication is normally done from when children are first born. And I say a lot of other cultures. I don't actually know the cultures. I know other cultures just do it naturally because they don't have nappies and things. And it's basically where you learn your child's cues to take them to the toilet. So when they need a
rather
wee or a
than
poo.
doing potty training at the typical toddler age of maybe 2, 3, 4.
2, 3,
I don't know what age you...
We don't know this now because we haven't done it.
Instead, you kind of do it straight from birth.
Yeah.
You do potty training. It's very different, though. And to a certain extent, I think people would say it's not potty training.
Yes.
It's a different method. We're going to talk through our journey through that.
From the get-go, Lily didn't like doing poos in nappies at all. And I'm not like, oh, she was so good. I mean, like, she just would not. She would eventually, but she normally would wait at any point till she was naked. And then we used to call it a poo ceremony. So we'd have to lay her out on the changing mat and then she'd do a poo.
This is the reason we got into doing this particularly. We often tell people, it wasn't particularly we didn't initiate it. Lily didn't want to do a poo in a nappy. And so it forced us down this path.
So I was talking to one of my American friends. A lot of Americans seem to move to Harrogate and make friends with them and then they move away. I'm not saying it's my fault, but I'm saying I have a lot of American friends who seem to come over here. I was saying to her, oh, it's so odd. We have this whole going on whenever she wants to poo, we have to lay her out naked. And I was even saying it's so annoying. Every time I change her nappy, that's when she wants to do a wee. My friend was like, oh, have you not thought about doing elimination communication? And I was just like, I've never heard of that. What is it? And she was saying some of her friends had started doing it over in the States and it was like taking off as a thing over there. So she basically I think sent me a YouTube link for me to look at what it was and what you did. And then I was like, hey, you know what? It might actually be a good idea to not lose this skill of her wanting to wait and actually doing it now.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what inspired us to start, because we'd never heard of it before.
Yeah, we'd never heard of it before. And similar to, I suppose, some of the other styles in our creative play episode where we talked about Montessori and Waldorf styles of education and things, it's similar to them in the way that it's actually both a really old thing and a really new thing.
Yeah.
So I was looking it up. Apparently the term elimination communication was coined by a writer in around 2001. Right. So fairly recently.
Fairly recent.
But it's based on her observations of mothers in India and other cultures that, go back historically. Yeah. It's kind of what they've naturally done.
Well, I think
for
even
years.
In the West, I think children did used to be potty trained a lot younger, and it was like all marketing by nappy brands that they were like, oh, you should wait, it's better for the child. Like, once again, I think it was a big marketing thing, because I'm sure my mum...
This is a frustration. And it's a shame we didn't mention this in the consumerism episode.
Think of this at the time.
Yeah, but
I'm sure my mum was saying how, like, Gran used to say when she was little, everybody was potty trained very young.
Yeah.
And it wasn't till like a lot of branding came in to be like, oh, it's better for them to wait and, don't put that pressure. And fair enough, don't put that pressure on them. But it was kind of almost, they did it in the wrong way because it was marketing.
There's no pressure, every parent, you should do what works for you.
And I think your child.
But being aware that you don't have to wait till they're 3 or whatever, or 2, or that is a big push by nappy companies to sell more nappies.
Yeah.
You can start a lot younger. So we, as an overview, we started around 6 months.
Which once again isn't typical.
We didn't do the proper thing of doing it from birth because we didn't know about it. We hadn't discovered it.
And I'll be honest, I don't know, even God willing, when we have another one, if I will do it from birth. I know that's the ideal, but I think because I'll have had a C-section again, it would just be very difficult to do that extra.
Yeah. So we started at 6 months, and Lily, like we've said, because she didn't want to do a poo in a nappy, she really took to it.
Quick,
so within a few months, we had made huge progress.
Yeah.
It's difficult to remember exactly, but by around 10 months, she was completely potty trained.
Yeah.
And by a year, she was completely out of nappies.
Yeah.
And wearing pants. She wore pants through the night. She never wet herself.
This was going to be one of my point of struggles.
Yeah.
Finding pants for 1-year-olds, very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Which I didn't even consider, but because it's not expected over here that your child will be out of nappies, we need really small pants.
I think this is a common experience. I've spoken to a little friend of ours who runs a podcast over in Cardiff for parents, a little mum, Mammalog podcast. I've been chatting with her on Instagram, and you've listened to her episodes on elimination communication. And one of the things she had it in similar with our experience was trying to find small pants.
Yeah.
And she actually had the same thing as us, actually. The ones she could find were like little frilly girls' pants.
Oh,
which I remember was a thing that we had when we started.
It was, yeah.
Which is bizarre.
It is.
Bizarre.
Similar with a potty. Most potties are too big.
Everything is designed for doing potty training with a toddler, not with a baby.
I just kept looking at Amazon till I saw reviews that they were like, this is a really small potty. And I was like, great.
Anyway, as we do, we're kind of jumping around a little bit, but I thought it'd be helpful to give an overview.
Yes.
And again, we're not trying to show off that she was potty trained by a year. That's not the purpose at all. That it's just, showcasing our journey, which is maybe pretty different from what other people do. So shall we jump back to the beginning and kind of go through it stage by stage? Is 6 months the starting point then? We've said we didn't know about it beforehand.
No.
You've explained how you kind of were introduced to it by one of your friends as maybe this is something we should explore. And then we kind of just went for it. Like, okay, well, let's get a potty. And I think almost on the dot of her turning 6 months, we began just carrying a potty around with us.
We did, yeah. And I remember, so we started out doing every time we changed her nappy, we'd just put her on the potty.
Yeah.
Which worked pretty well because it was normally every time we changed her nappy is when she wanted to do a wee or a poo anyway. So that was quite successful, actually. I mean, we did learn when she wanted to go. So she normally wanted to go after she'd eaten. And obviously when she first woke up from a nap, she went.
Yeah. You learn their habits and routines and the little tiny cues that indicate that they might need the toilet.
And also we started doing a thing that was like mimicking. So that's when we learned what face she did when she wanted to do a poo.
Yeah.
When we put her on the potty, we'd do the poo face at her to be like, do you want to do a poo?
Yeah.
And
or
then
make a wee sound.
I'll make a wee noise. And that meant she would like either wee or poo, depending what she needed to do. But looking at us like, oh, yes, they're doing that poo face that I do. So I'm going to go to a poo. Like, it was really weird.
A mix of working out her cues to know when she needed the toilet and therefore putting her on a potty at the right time so that she would go there rather than in her nappy. Alongside that, we also did the kind of encouraging her to go when she was on the potty through mimicking.
And also to get her, like, almost familiar with it.
Yeah, why am I sat on this thing? What's it for?
Like, a lot of the time I wanted it to just be positive that she'd sat on the potty.
Yeah.
And it was fine.
At that stage, they're still like wearing nappies.
Yeah.
So you don't worry too much if they're still going in a nappy. You just, when you change them, you put them on the potty and then...
Yeah.
I don't know, you'll have to tell me about this because I don't know how much of what we did is what you're meant to do and how much of it's just we muddled through and it kind of worked.
Think a lot of it we merged. So, because elimination communication, normally it's you're just picking up on their cues and then following their cues. Whereas I think we did do some of that, but we also did kind of encourage her. Like to like the potty and things, which I don't know if that's really a step you do of just being like, you can sit in the potty and enjoy it.
We just treated it like we would treat anything we want to get her to do, like manners or getting dressed or anything else. It was a bit of positive reinforcement and treats for doing it right and getting her used to
she
it.
She never had a treat for going on the potty. She was just kind of like...
No, you give her praise and things.
We did. And I know this is Mammalog said we shouldn't really give them praise because it's meant to be like they control their body. Which is fair, but we didn't know that. We were just like, great, you've done a poo or a wee.
We definitely don't do that now. Like,
No.
we very much are like, it's bedtime, you are going to the toilet. Maybe we don't have the best advice. Again, we're just sharing our experience. It's not necessarily a blueprint of this is the best way to do things.
Yeah. Oh, also another thing we did is I often would put the potty by the toilet. So when I was sat on the toilet, she could sit on the potty, and then she kind of felt like you were going together. So it was like, oh, this is what Mama does, and this is what I do. Like following what.
See, that's an interesting one. I don't know if that's part of the proper method or
No,
not.
I don't think it is really.
Where we very quickly were like, I think because Lily was very aware of her surroundings and what was going on, you could see her looking around and going, why am I sat in the middle of the living room doing a poo?
Yeah.
That I know this is not normal.
She quickly caught on that was odd.
Like, Mama and Baba go to this bathroom.
Go to the bathroom.
And go there. So why am I doing it somewhere else? So we quickly were like, I think, again, it's kind of a Montessori approach to doing this, where we were like, we're going to mimic how adults do this.
So we'll put it in the bathroom. And she did like then, because I'd sit on the toilet too. She's like, oh, this is what we do. We come in here, we sit on the toilet. That's, this is what this room is for.
At this kind of time, maybe around 7 to 8 months, where we were making good progress on this, there were a lot of challenges it throws up, not in the potty training itself, but just the surrounding kind of, our lives surrounding it, in terms of, it made it quite challenging with how do we approach, leaving her with someone? How, because suddenly there was this whole other element
that you had to explain to someone.
Requiring to look after her.
You know her routine. So you're like, oh, about, I don't know, however many minutes after she eats, that's when she wants to go to the toilet. And it's really hard because you can't impart all that wisdom.
And the little
to
cues
someone else
that she gives that she needs the toilet, it's very difficult explaining.
Her poo face.
Yeah, very difficult explaining that to someone, or to say like, because it's not like she needs the toilet at a set time every day, because that's ridiculous. They're not going to do that. But there are kind of cues around, if she's drunk at this time, she will potentially need the toilet then.
This is around the right amount of time.
She's had a nap, she's probably going to need the toilet when she wakes up.
Yeah.
But trying to impart all that knowledge to someone else.
Yeah, difficult.
Yeah.
So I think it did make us less able to have other people look after her, especially for long periods of time. Quite difficult.
And it made you a little bit nervous about it, because we were keen that we made progress with potty training. So you didn't want her to wet herself. At that early stage, she was still in nappies, so it's not terrible.
It didn't really matter.
But also the expectation that, it's one thing expecting, for example, the grandparents to change her nappy.
Oh, yeah.
And we know, I don't think we really actually left her with anyone.
Well, we were still a bit COVID-y, weren't we?
Yeah, so we didn't have a lot of this, but just the possibility of leaving her with someone, it's one thing to expect them to change a nappy, but another to go,
or do a
actually,
feed,
you, as well as that, you're going to need to put her on the potty at this time while you change the nappy.
Well, I remember at one point Dad did babysit, and he was so apologetic because she'd weed herself at some point. And I remember going, it's fine. Like, I don't expect her or you to be in sync yet. Like, these things will happen now and again, and that's fine that they happen. Like, I didn't want him to feel bad that he was like, oh, I didn't pick up on the cues and I didn't do it. I wanted to be like, that's natural. Like, you're not going to pick, like, we're not going to pick up on it every time.
So then progressing on,
I would say one problem we did have was that she started getting more rashes with her nappies.
Oh, yeah.
And that's when we kind of really started wanting to stop putting her in nappies. And I think it's because she was so used to not wearing them that when you did, because at first we would still put her in one at night because we couldn't,
Yeah.
And that's when I was kind of really going to push, like, they're just irritating, and now she doesn't need them most of the time. We really need to kick the habit of putting her in nappies.
So once again, we transitioned onto pants, away from nappies, and it was pretty early. Like we said, we struggled to find pants that were small enough. But again, it wasn't that we'd nailed parenting. We've got all the answers. We know what we're doing. Yeah, within a few months, we were out of nappies. It's not to celebrate that success, but like you were saying, Lily forced us into it because she was getting rashes, and it was like, well, we're gonna have to stop having the nappies on.
Yeah.
When we made the shift out of nappies, it actually really helped her potty training.
It did.
Because she was aware that she was no longer in a nappy where she could wet herself. Whereas when she was wearing a nappy, she would, be like, well, it's not too bad if I don't make it. Whereas now
more incentive.
More incentive. And she became incredibly so,
Yeah.
really good at holding herself if she needed a wee. Because she'd like try and give us a cue.
Yeah, she'd get your attention like, hey, hiya. Need a wee.
Like she couldn't talk at this stage, but she would indicate in various ways. You know, she's approaching like kind of 9 months or so.
And
so
she could kind of like point at the potty.
She could indicate more so than she could before that she needed the toilet. But she would just hold it then and wait. And you'd be rushing, going like, oh, quick, get her on the potty, quick, pull her pants down.
Yeah.
But the other thing that this change forced us into, which the potty training had forced us into it. I was always keen from a young age. I thought I'd be a parent where I'd go, I want her to remain in like cute baby clothes for as long as possible.
You had a big thing about
I used to get annoyed that people would dress up babies to look like toddlers before their age. I was like, just enjoy them being young.
Very big on this. Yeah.
But it turned out we had to transition away from like baby grows and onesies very quickly, because as soon as we started potty training, we needed trousers that we could pull up and down.
Quick away,
So we needed 2 pieces, clothes that came as sets that weren't.
And that was still a little bit of a challenge because there wasn't many in her age range.
Yeah.
And if they were in her age range, they assumed you were wearing a nappy. So they had like extra room.
For a long time, we had this problem where trousers had just been too big on her waist or have like this really baggy bit at the bum.
Yeah.
Because they assume you're wearing a nappy underneath. And we're like, well Lily's not wearing a nappy.
Because we had like Blade and Rose leggings. And I loved that brand.
Yeah.
But they were always made for nappies.
Yeah.
So I loved them.
Great leggings.
But she could barely fit them most of the time.
They just fall down.
Because they just fell down. So then we needed things that you could almost have a belt on.
Yeah.
Or that you could had like a waist that you could like, pull a thing so that, that's it. So that it would fit her.
I'd forgotten all these challenges. Yeah, there's a lot of things. Again, because I don't think...
we're not painting it as, it's fabulous. Like, you do have extra challenges because you've done things early.
And because it's not the norm.
Yeah.
Because it's not what's encouraged. Not many people know about it. I mean, it'd be fascinating to know if you've heard of it, if you'd ever consider it, if, I don't know.
I wonder in, like, if other countries, maybe there is more.
Maybe.
For children that age, just because they know.
Or maybe there are... Maybe we just weren't as aware. Maybe there are places to get appropriate clothing and pants and potties and all sorts for people that are doing it of this method that we just weren't aware of.
Yeah, it's a good point.
So maybe if you're big into elimination communication, you can direct us to where
you got things from.
Where you got things from, because that'd be great.
Yeah, because even though we were semi-doing it, we didn't really follow any blogs or people's advice. We kind of just muddled our way through.
We just muddled through, like a lot of parenting really. We just muddle through. New for this series of Don't Wake the Baby, over on our website, we've got a resource there to share with you. I've mentioned it before, but just to remind you, if you're looking for a baby or toddler group around Yorkshire, particularly North Yorkshire, North and East Yorkshire, then we've got a big list of different groups and activities for babies, toddlers or young families that are hosted around the area in Methodist churches particularly, because that's what we're associated with and we have a connection with the Methodist Church. And so we've compiled a list of places that we would recommend that, it's just there for you to check out if you're interested in finding somewhere to physically take your child or occupy your baby, or a mums and tots group to meet with other parents, a messy church to do some craft and creative activities with the whole family, whatever it might be. Go take a look if that's of interest. I hope it's of valuable resource to you. As mentioned, we're part of the Methodist Church, and as part of that, this podcast is supported by and in partnership with the Kairos movement, which is a network of projects, a bit like this podcast, doing all sorts of various things around Yorkshire. We're kind of people who are exploring faith in various different ways, and that's where we get our support from. There's maybe other projects within Kairos that might be of interest or value to you, so if you want to check them out, have a look at the web page. But if not, just enjoy listening to the podcast. That's absolutely fine. We'd love it if you would get involved more with our community here. You can do that through YouTube in the comments, through our social media on Instagram. Both of those are at don'twakethebaby_podcast. Or particularly if you want to chat directly with us and other parents, join our group chat on Facebook, linked with our Facebook group, and you can, have a bit more of a personal communication and connectivity with other people, the mutual support. That's the idea anyway. That's what we're going for. So that would be great. If any of those things appeal to you, do get involved. We'd love to hear from you. If you send us a message, we'll always reply and get back in touch with you. To be honest, not many people do message us. We're a pretty small little podcast that's growing. So we'll always respond and be in touch with you, me or Emma. Yeah, that's great. If you want to learn more, click all the links. All the links are down in the description, in the show notes. Just scroll down, find them there. While you're there, click some of the buttons, share this podcast with other people, with other parents you might know. If you want to have a reminder of that link, then I'll say it again as I do every episode, probably for no reason at all, but it's www.kairosmovement.org.uk/Don't Wake the Baby. So let's jump back into it and talk about moving on a few months to where we kind of got to the stage where she was fully potty trained, but there was a particular event that kind of really
catalyst.
Yeah, that's a great word there for what finally made us kind of get out of nappies, I suppose.
Yeah. So we went on a holiday to Crete.
I think it must have been the first abroad holiday we'd done with Lily.
It was.
So it was a big ordeal.
Yeah, big occasion. And we made the decision not to bring the potty because we had so much to bring. When you have a little one, you've got so many things to bring. And we knew from going out to restaurants and stuff, we could put her on the toilet and she would go on the toilet when we held her on.
So we did make a transition, which, again, I don't know if this is the proper way or if something we just muddled through.
Yeah.
And this holiday, in conjunction with this, really kicked it off. But
it did.
We did start, actually, putting her on a toilet.
Yeah.
Much like you do with a toddler, where they have the kind of little booster seat.
Yeah.
So it's the right size. Except, Lily was very little, so she couldn't hold herself on a toilet.
Yeah.
She could hold herself up on a potty, but you needed to be there on a toilet.
Yeah.
But she would cope as well with that as she would with a potty.
Yes.
In most of the time.
She would. I just made sure to take her to the toilet before the flight. And we purposely didn't choose somewhere that was too far away. And on the fly, I took her to the toilet with me. I remember at the time, the people were like, oh, there's no baby changing in there. And I was like, yeah, I know.
We don't need it.
I don't need that. That's not the bit I need. And then when we got abroad, we only took her to the toilet. And she did really well.
And it was a challenge for us because it meant you had to be really on it because you didn't have always a toilet very nearby.
No.
So you had to be very aware of when she's going to need to go.
Yeah.
Is she going to tell us? And then you'd have to go, and often it'd be like a few minute walk to
she
find the toilet.
was very adamant at this point she would not go to the toilet outside.
Yeah, you couldn't just put her anywhere. You couldn't just pull her pants down and
be like, go in this bush. She wouldn't do that because we tried that at one point and we were like, nope.
And I think that was good because I think that at that age would confuse her.
It would, that you could go toilet anywhere.
Yeah.
It just when you were desperate. So we were on the beach at one point and she needed to go potty.
So you had to run back to the hotel.
Luckily, the hotel
road.
wasn't far because it was a beachside hotel. But you still had to go across a road, up the stairs, up a lift or something, and then to the toilet.
But she was very particular about toilets in that, little portaloos and things.
Yeah, well, this
fan.
was when she was a bit older, but we went to a festival and she refused to go to the toilet the entire time we were at the festival. And if she did, she'd be crying as she went because she didn't like it. And
they were horrible.
They were
portaloos.
horrible portaloos.
Really horrible.
So the poor little thing, I think you had to walk up to that fancy house nearby.
Yeah, but she'd left it to the last minute and she was desperate. And she was I could feel her getting
clenching.
Wet in my hand. I was carrying her like a baby.
Yeah.
I could feel, she was a little older here. Yeah. She was a year and 3 or 4 months. Yeah, but I could feel her. She was clenching to try and hold it in, but she was struggling to hold on. I was like, why didn't you tell me a bit sooner? Because we've got to walk like 5 minutes up to these nice fancy toilets. Yeah. But we made it.
We did.
Yeah.
I remember
she was like running.
She was so funny because I remember I kept saying to her, toilet, and she'd go, no. Like looking at me like,
she's
this isn't
really
a toilet.
good at holding it when
Very
she's like,
good.
doesn't want to go.
Yeah.
So actually, sorry, we're jumping about
we
again.
Are jumping with
We'll get back to the holiday in a second or two, but for a few months, I had a lot of scenarios where Lily would need to go. She'd shown she needed to go, but she was stubborn, a bit like me.
Yeah.
And she was like, I don't want to go. I'm going to just hold it. And I was like,
and we did a phrase where she wanted me to put her on the toilet.
Yeah.
So she'd be with you and go like, no, I want Mama to come down the stairs.
Or Mama's not here. Like, you're going to have to go.
Yeah.
And she'd be... So there were quite a few occasions where I would wrestle her onto a toilet, physically pin her down.
Which people are not going to lie. So
no,
have
they're
to
not.
put this on the podcast.
I'm keeping it in.
Oh, no.
I'm sorry. It's like with the car seat thing, and she'd be like throwing herself everywhere, and I'd be like, I'm holding you on the toilet. And it would feel mean. But then as soon as she was like stuck there, then she'd do a huge, huge wee. And I'd be like, see, you needed to go.
Yeah.
I'd be like, you made all that fuss.
Yeah.
And I know like your parents and my parents were sometimes round and were like, oh, he's fighting
mean,
with her. He's being very mean about this. I'm not sure about this. And then they found like she'd been to the toilet. And then like once we got to the point where she was properly toilet trained, they looked back and were like, actually, we did quite a good job. Just, maybe don't judge me for wrestling the child onto the toilet.
I think he was more annoyed as well because he knew had I been there, she'd have just gone.
Yeah.
Because she wanted me. She still has a bit of this thing.
Yeah. We both have a stubborn streak in us, and sometimes Baba and Lily come to blows.
Baba and Lily both very stubborn.
Yeah, and we fight over silly things.
They do. Or even now, she can go to the potty or toilet by herself. She has no problem. But she often wants me to walk and stand beside her, which I'm happy to do. But it's a very similar thing where she's like, well, I want Mama to be with me as I go. It's almost like I'm going to go, but I want Mama to go too. I want her to be there.
Yeah. Anyway, shall we get back to the holiday story?
Back to the holiday story.
So the holiday is what really kicked off our transition into being fully potty trained. Yeah. Because she had no other option. She didn't want to go anywhere. And so we had to always take her to a toilet.
She got very good at telling us, though, she needed to go. And this was one of our first words we would teach her.
Yeah.
Was toilet.
Yeah.
And I didn't teach her potty because I remember thinking when she goes to nursery, I'm not sure if they'll have a potty or a toilet. So we'll teach her toilet so that's the one thing she can say to let people know.
Yeah.
So we did focus on that word a lot.
Yeah.
Which was quite intentional.
So again, it was a very strange situation where we got to her turning 1. Yeah. She was fully potty trained, but would go to the toilet on a toilet. Like she wouldn't, we put the potty away for a long time. We didn't use it. We didn't have it out.
We've only brought it out back recently just for convenience.
Yeah.
But for a long time, she wouldn't go on it because she was like, I'm a big girl. I don't want to go on the potty. I want to go on the toilet.
So like she'd be in pants, she'd sleep through the night, and she would just tell you when she needed the toilet, and you'd take her upstairs to the toilet and she'd go to the toilet. And it's incredible, really. We got to that point and we were like, this has been worth it. Like it's not actually taken that long, but
and in a lot of ways, I'm not saying it's not a lot of work because it is.
It was a lot of work,
but because she wanted, as in she didn't want to go in a nappy and she wanted to potty train, I think it was a lot easier going than if you have a child who doesn't want to. So like a lot of my sisters, they have boys, and they said they could not have cared less if they were dirty or clean. Like to them, it was just a chore going to the toilet. I think this is a common trend. It's not necessarily a fact of life, but it is a trend that girls tend to be slightly better at potty training than boys, or slightly quicker at potty training. Yeah, I would say that's true. But that is all at the age people normally potty train. Yeah. Maybe if you do it younger, maybe boys don't have as much difference. Maybe. Who knows? But yeah, I just remember my sisters saying their sons had shown no interest. And it's really interesting that my sister Kirsty, her little girl, already very similar to Lily in that does not like being wet. It is interesting that we've inspired a few friends actually to have a go at doing this, and not. It's funny that they're following our tactic of muddling through from about 6 months or so, rather than doing it
quote unquote properly
I know.
from birth. But, do whatever you like. If we've encouraged you to try it a bit earlier than you might have done, that's great. Good. I mean, we've had fluctuations where we've since then gone up and down. We've had, the typical thing of having accidents in the middle of the night and having to change bedding. We invested in some of those mats to put on top of her, like, waterproof, like sheets to save the bedding from getting wet. So we've been through some of the more typical stuff that toddlers go through, but by no means have a similar experience at all, really. Yeah.
And it was very irregular, if that makes any sense. Especially now, I can say it's so rare we've ever had an accident recently.
And I think that's, one of the things that was interesting about this whole journey is even now, and we're a long way, we're now at the age where most kids are
starting to
potty training, or some people are potty trained. And I still feel a little bit guilty when I go, oh yeah, she's fully potty trained. We don't have accidents. But imagine that when we were at 1 year old. Yeah. And I was very nervous to tell people, like, oh yeah, you don't need to change a nappy. She'll go on the toilet. She's completely potty trained. She'll tell you. I almost felt guilty that we'd been successful, and I didn't want to show off. I didn't want to be like big headed.
Well, I remember I was at Busy Bees.
Oh yeah.
And I remember I was in the sensory bit, and it was Lily who was one, and some other little, because it's for like babies and young toddlers, that area you're in.
Yeah.
I remember some other mums were sitting near me, the children were playing together, and then midway through it, one of them said, "Oh, does your child not wear a nappy?"
Oh, because they'd noticed. Because it can be quite obvious that she's not wearing a nappy, and they were surprised.
Froze. Because in my head, I was like, what do I say?
What do I say?
Because I don't want to go, not in a mean way, I didn't want to go, oh, yeah, she's potty trained. Because that sounds like, oh, yes, she's potty trained. So in my head, I was trying to think, what can I say that isn't a lie, but doesn't make it sound like I'm like, oh, yeah, she's potty trained. So in the end, I was like, oh, she just really never liked doing a poo in a nappy. So we ended up just, trying to train her early. And the thing was, then they were really interested, which was great. But once again, you try and say it without going, oh, yes. And
they were interested, but I do remember they gave you a very odd look when you were first describing it. They just looked not surprised in a good way. They looked baffled in a kind of, what do you mean you started that young? That's not a thing. So
it was a thing then. I'll be kind of like, oh, God, I hope no one notices she's not wearing
I think now we would be a lot braver.
Yeah.
And we would be like, yeah, this is elimination communication. This is what we're doing. Yeah. It is a thing. Like, I feel a lot more confident in the knowledge that there's other people that do it.
Yeah, true.
That, I feel less worried about offending people. I'm a bit more,
My thing isn't about offending people. I just think it's really hard as parents. You constantly feel like people are doing better than you. And I felt like I didn't want to be another thing that was like, you should be doing this.
There's a lot of judgy parents.
You can't do everything.
And I didn't want to be a judgy parent or come across like that.
With us, a lot of people are like, oh, have you done baby sign language? And I'd always go, oh, no, we haven't. Which, once again, I can see would be really useful when you're elimination communication or potty training.
Yeah.
But at the time, I was like, we're doing so much with her. I can't do that as well.
Yeah.
And Lily does know some baby sign language anyway, because they taught her at nursery. And it meant then we had to learn what some of it was. But it's stuff like that, in that there shouldn't be a pressure. As in, I almost felt like when I told people to be like, there is no pressure for you to do this if you don't want to do it. Which is hard to say when you don't know someone. To go, don't do this if you don't want to, just what we've done. It is funny, though. This is for people listening. My sister in France, her little boy, Nassie, because Lily was trained early, he was really putting his brother under pressure because Lily was younger than him. And I remember on, we were FaceTiming, well, not FaceTiming, WhatsApp video calling. And he'd go, come on, Isaac, look, Lily's on the potty. You should be going on the potty. And Becky was trying to explain, like, people do things at different ages. But I think they did eventually potty train slightly early just because Nassim was so adamant that his brother wouldn't get behind. I was going to talk about nursery and nanny, but I just wanted to say both of them were really cool with it.
Yeah.
So, like,
we were surprised.
Nanny, we just explained it's around, 40 minutes or whatever from when she last drank, she'll probably need to go.
She's been really good though,
She
because
has been.
she's really in tune with Lily, and so
Yeah.
very quickly picked up
Yeah.
Lily's cues, and she comes every week, so she's
Yeah. But I'm
became
saying
very familiar.
She had no experience of that, so
No.
she did really well.
And I was
getting
worried,
quick.
like, when we first employed
Yeah.
her, that introducing her to her and being like, yeah, we are potty training. This is something
Yeah.
we're going to kind of expect you to
Yeah.
to try and do with her.
I think so. Why I liked her when we first hired her was she was very young and kind of open-minded.
Yeah.
Because I was very worried when we were looking at nannies, not in a mean way, because I'm sure some older people are open-minded, but I was worried we'd get an older nanny who was like, well, I know how to raise a child. I've raised all these children. This is what we do. And I was worried there'd be somebody who'd almost try and put their opinion on us, whereas she's been really good and just kind of gone with what we like. And, she's been very, like, easy to just go, okay, yeah, sure, that's what we're doing. We'll do that. And I want to say nursery really good too. We explained... They were surprised, but we explained, like, oh, you just put her on the toilet. And I was really worried the first week, like, 2 times she was there, that she'd have a lot of accidents. And actually, she rarely had an accident ever. But I was very worried because, when they're in a new place and they don't know the people, I was worried Lily wouldn't be secure enough to tell them.
Yeah.
Which is why I'd focused so much on going, you're learning the word toilet so you can tell them you need to go. Which it was good because she did have that vocabulary then. She couldn't speak a lot, but she could say mama, baba, toilet.
Yeah. The normal vocab. The normal first words that you
Because
learn.
I was really like, I don't want you to feel uncomfortable and then be embarrassed, I want to say big point is also like, we never were really mean or told Lily off if she had an accident.
Oh, no.
Because
no.
I'm very much of the mind like, they can't help it.
No.
It's a natural thing. And,
And I think maybe because she was so young,
yeah.
I never felt like we should tell her off because you're like, of course she doesn't understand. But maybe
Yeah.
that is more difficult with an older toddler where you're like, come on, you should understand this now.
I know
you should be able to
from
grasp
my
this.
sister Laura, she said one of her children was plain laziness.
Yeah.
And that she'd go, do you need the toilet? And he'd go, yeah. And she'd go, well, are you going to go? And he'd be like, no, I'll go in my nappy. And she was just looking at him like, but you know you need to go. You can physically go. But you just look at me and like, but that's a lot of work.
And I think this is, we've said about some of the challenges of doing this method and been a little bit apologetic about how we managed to go through this journey. But I think there is something to be said of, promoting it as a good way to look at maybe doing it, because you do eliminate some of those challenges down the path.
do.
That being potty trained that early, it does open you up to, you don't have to buy and have nappies all the time. Saves you money. That's
Good
all
for the
good.
environment,
Good for the environment. There's a lot of positives in that regard. And it also means as a toddler, you don't have the whole challenge of potty training, which in a way is almost harder, I think, from hearing some of the stories of people trying to potty train toddlers.
I think it's also, we didn't have to go through the phase where they wouldn't want a nappy change. So a lot of my sisters, they've had stories of where they've had to wrestle the child to the ground because the child doesn't want their nappy changed and it's like full of poo or wet or...
Because they're aware and they know what they want. They're of an age, whereas we...
And they're at a point where they're like, well, I'm playing. I don't want to stop right now.
Whereas Lily's grown up, and to a certain extent, we did this during a phase of her life where she was becoming aware.
Yes.
And so it's all she's ever known.
Yeah.
She doesn't know, she can't remember a time where she used to go in nappies particularly, because she's always gone on a toilet in her memory. And so I think a lot of some of the methods for dealing with potty training toddlers, it's a trial by fire. You kind of have to go, right, it's a bit like dummies, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Sometimes you just have to draw a line in the sand and say, we're just going to take the nappy off and we'll have to deal with accidents.
Yeah.
But we didn't have to kind of do that. We could do it slowly over time with a younger child. And we did manage it in a fairly short space of time. But it doesn't mean that other people have to.
No.
You could start very young and just take your time with it.
Even they said just getting the child used to the potty as a positive thing. So maybe not fully having them trained. Or fully elimination communication, but having a positive association so that when they get to the age where they start potty training, it's not a brand new thing that they don't know and it's cold and they don't like it.
Yeah.
It's this is a potty. I'm kind of used to this. It's not unfamiliar.
Yeah.
Which I think is once again quite a nice middle road if you're going to go down that route. My mum thought I was mean at first. But I did explain, like, otherwise I'm going to have to, for the rest of her time before we potty train, I'm going to have to lie her naked on a mat every time I want her to do a poo, Mum. That's a bit ridiculous. And like you said, then once she was 1 and potty trained, Mum would be showing off to my daughters, doing the opposite to what we were doing.
Yeah. The grandparents love to show off.
You do.
Be like, our granddaughter is potty trained. She can drink from a cup.
Yeah,
she's eating great.
Yeah.
Blah, blah.
Yeah.
I'm like, you don't need to show off to and make other parents feel guilty.
Yeah.
I
But
know
it
you're very
amused me
proud of your grandchild.
Because I was like...
I think this is a good, example of where parenting has changed a lot and moved on. And a lot of us, I suppose, not necessarily new methods. A lot of these methods are very old, but we try different stuff to what our parents do.
Yeah.
And in doing that, we sometimes find we don't have the support around us in the ways we would like to enable us to. And I think part of that's what this podcast is about, is providing a network of support for people.
Yeah.
So if this is something you want to try, we're here to support you.
Yeah.
If there's other things you want to try or other ways,
or if you're more of an expert than us, let us know what
we
you
are
should be
by
doing.
no means experts on it.
No.
I'm sure you can tell from the podcast.
Because I'm sure a lot of people would say what we do isn't elimination communication.
Yeah, we probably
and I'd
got
say,
it wrong.
Yeah, it's probably 50-50. Like it was, I think we started and then we just started making up what we were doing.
We love to make up parenting as we go along. So, we've come to near the end of the podcast. Our rambly chat is being wound up as we speak.
It is.
I think I've been badly organised. I don't know that I have a particular parenting story or comment or thing from a listener.
Boo. We should have asked for potty training stories. That would have been good. Hindsight.
We're just bad at running a podcast.
We're not bad. We're just very busy people.
Just this parenting business gets in the way of everything. Oh, what can you do? So one kind of is not particularly a story, but kind of a comment that Mamalog sent in to us about
Mentioned a lot this.
Yeah. Well, like I said, she's one of the few people we've encountered who've followed a similar path, and so it's been really interesting engaging with her on Instagram. Go check out her podcast if you're not already. She's got a whole episode about her journey with Elimination Communication. But one of the things she recommended that she got more into it and found out more about it is a thing called Go Diaper Free, which she found really helpful in giving tips and different, resource and support to
That might be where she
it.
said she got the potty from. When I was listening to her podcast, she was saying she got a special potty, which I do think, she said it like, boys and girls, but I do think it was helpful for boys because, we haven't had this experience, but they can just pee straight up in the air.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, not thought of that.
And I know they say girls can, but we've never had that experience.
No, yeah.
So they've like something to kind of shield it. So like,
clever.
so it still goes back in the potty.
Yeah, very good.
Which is a fair point.
Yeah. But go check that out. I follow them now on Instagram, Go Diaper Free, and give lots of good little things and encouragement as well to keep going, that actually you can start anytime doing this.
I think that would be my thing. We didn't do it from birth and it actually still went really fast. And I'm not saying it was easy, but I think it is easier than potty training later on.
So if anything's a takeaway from this, don't follow or believe the nappy companies. You can do potty training at any time, literally from birth onwards. You can give it a go and see how you get on.
And if it's not going well, you can stop and start. Don't feel under pressure to just
there we go.
steam ahead.
Well, it'd be great to hear your thoughts on this episode, how you found it. It's a bit of a slightly different one from us, being a bit brazen with our topic, but previously some of our more controversial topics have been our more popular podcast episodes, so it'll be interesting to see with this one. But thank you so much for listening and joining us today. We'll hear you next time for a different topic when you can come back and listen to Emma and me ramble about something else.
That's all from us today.
Goodbye, God bless, sleep well.
Wake the baby.